So when I'm in a studio, I really care about the light. I need to shape it. I want to make sure that my exposures are correct, and I want to do it quickly, really quickly. I want to be able to set my light and have it correct, and then be able to interact with my subject. Because that's really where I think photos are made, is having the subject looking toward you, looking away, having a conversation, getting different moods. And if I'm constantly distracted by my light, I'm not going to get the image that I want. So I need to be able to come in, set the light, get the exposure exactly the way I want it, set the ratios, and then trust that my equipment is calibrated and perfect, and then those images are going to be correct. And that's what happens when I have a properly calibrated light meter. This lighting setup, I use speed lights. In fact, I use 4 speed lights. The first was our key light, and I used a small softbox with an egg crate to make sure I got nice soft light on our model's face without getting any spill onto the back wall, which was a white wall. Now that created that wall to fall into black, so I added a second light that illuminated the wall, but I didn't want just a white wash. I wanted sort of a vignette, so I put a grid on that light to give a nice sort of a halo behind the model and let that fall into darkness around her. But I also wanted to really separate her hair from the wall as well, so I put another speed light with the snoot on her hair, and that just gives us a traditional separation light on her hair, and the snoot made sure that no light spilled into the lens, giving us lens flare. Then the last thing I wanted to do was to really chisel her cheekbone and contrast that soft light from the softbox. So I used a 4th speed light with a grid, and it was just hard light coming in and really highlighting that cheekbone. So we got this nice shape that gave us depth, and I really liked the results we got. So in addition to just the ease of use of being able to dial in power right from the meter, there are times when it can really make a difference between making and breaking the setup. Specifically in this setup, I had a light with a snoot and 2 lights with grids, and they're finicky. So if you move those just a little bit, it's going to throw off where that light is falling. And so if you have to lower that light and make an adjustment on the speed light and raise it up, then you basically have to start from scratch, because you got to figure out where that light is, make sure it's falling on the person's head, and then remeter and go again. Even if you don't lower that light, you just change the power output. With some of those snoots, they're cloth and they can move around, so you can mess up your lighting just by adjusting things. So with the meter, it's great. You can just meter it. If things need to change it right there, you're done. In this lighting setup, I used a single light and a silver reflector. And I used a 4x6 softbox with continuous light, and I set the softbox horizontally. And that light is just wrapping around the models. And with that silver reflector nice and close, what we're getting is just nice, soft light. I love shooting in that kind of an environment because you can see what you're going to get, and you can also shoot very, very quickly. You don't have to wait for flashes to recycle. It's just something that allows me to really start interacting and creating photos, and I can really go through a range of emotions really quickly without having to wait for things to recycle and change things. In this shot specifically, I am metering for the highlights, because I want to capture all those highlights and make sure nothing falls out of the range of my camera. And so with a consistent light like that, specifically with one light source, you can change the direction of your metering to either capture all the highlights and preserve those, or capture the shadows, or get a good average between the two and get the best compromise. Now if you do things right with the reflector, you can make sure that you compress everything to fall within the dynamic range of your camera. You don't have to make a compromise and lose shadows or lose highlights. You get everything. I wanted to make sure that was happening, so I metered the highlights, and then I brought in that reflector to make sure we didn't have any loss of shadows. And so this is something that was a happy accident, and I shot straight into that light, and because of exactly where the model was, bridging the gap between softbox and seamless paper, it gave us a nice, perfect, even transition. So you can't tell where the seamless paper reflection starts and where just the overexposed light coming straight into the lens starts. I wanted to get a look that looked like ambient, natural sunlight, where that strong background light was maybe the sun, and then I was just filling with the beauty dish. And that's really what I was going for, to have really strong backlight that was beautiful, and then pop in some light with the beauty dish to make it look not like we were in a studio. And also, I love the fact that I can set my middle gray, my midpoint, and then I have a visual readout of what is going to happen in my exposure. So as I'm taking different readings to see if something is overexposed or underexposed, if I'm metering for my shadows or my highlights, I can see visually if that is going to be within my camera's capability. And if it's not, I can make changes And again, I don't have to take any photos to see if I have anything blown out or underexposed, if I'm losing detail. I can see right on the scale that I have everything that I need. And that's critical for a shot like this, where you need to make sure that you can still see the details with so much light flooding into the lens. And I could see it before I took a picture that we're going to be safe. So Muhammad Ali has a quote that I love. And he said, I'm paraphrasing, but he said, it's not the mountains ahead that wear us out, it's the pebble in your shoe. And I think that is absolutely applicable to photography. Photography is no different than becoming a master chef or a Major League Baseball player. You have to practice your craft consistently, over and over, and you're going to become a better photographer.